Artificial intelligence is moving at absolute breakneck speed, right? And Washington's calls to regulate it are just reaching a fever pitch. But what actually happens when the unstoppable force of this groundbreaking tech meets the immovable object of the US Congress? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating and really deep analysis from A16Z about how AI legislation actually navigates, or, well, completely fails to navigate, the labyrinth of Capitol Hill. We're going to look past the noisy headlines to understand the true underlying mechanics of the political system. Okay, let's dive right in.
Section 1. The AI Regulation Mystery.
Don't just stand there. Do something. I mean, that frantic sentiment has literally echoed through state and federal halls alike since generative AI exploded onto the scene in late 2022. There's been this absolute frenzy to figure out the right guardrails. And sure, while states have successfully woven this growing, complex web of local AI laws, the federal government, well, it's moving at a very, very different pace. But make no mistake, it is definitely not for a lack of ambition or ideas. AI regulation is easily one of the single most hotly debated topics in Washington right now. Lawmakers are definitely trying. Now, what's really interesting here is that over 100 AI-related bills have been introduced in Congress in just the past 2 years alone. Over 100. Representatives and senators are incredibly active. They're hosting hearings, bringing in experts, drafting proposals, and aggressively trying to chart a path to govern everything from deep fakes to autonomous systems. The sheer volume of paper being pushed is honestly staggering. But contrast all that massive legislative frenzy with the actual result. 1. Out of all those 100-plus proposals and heated committee debates over the last 2 years, only a single standalone bill, the Take It Down Act, has successfully cleared the hurdles and actually been signed into federal law. Just one single bill out of well over 100 attempts.
Which naturally leads us to ask a really critical question. What is the actual path to becoming a law here? Why is there such a massive, gaping hole between this urgent legislative effort and a reality of almost zero results? I mean, if everyone pretty much agrees that something needs to be done, why is it so incredibly hard to just do it?
Section 2. Blaming the usual suspects. So, when progress stalls in Washington, we instinctively point to the usual scapegoats, right? We assume it's got to be heavy-handed industry lobbying, or big tech companies actively blocking proposals behind closed doors, or, we just throw up our hands and blame the toxic partisan gridlock that seems to infect every issue these days. And frankly, while those are real dynamics that absolutely play a role, they completely fail to account for the fundamental reality of the situation. The true bottleneck isn't just about who is spending money or who is arguing on cable news, it's about the deep structural barriers built directly into the U.S. Congress itself. Section 3. The structural hurdle. Here's where we hit some real cognitive dissonance about how Washington works. Get this. Even proposals with broad bipartisan support and literally zero organized industry opposition still fundamentally struggle to advance. Think about the magnitude of that for a second. Even when every single person agrees and no corporate entity is fighting it, the legislation still gets stuck in the mud. This proves definitively that the barrier isn't merely political or financial. It's an inherent feature of the system's underlying design. The U.S. Congress simply isn't engineered to translate policy interest into law quickly, no matter how popular the idea is. To truly understand why, we need to grasp a core concept highlighted by the A16Z analysis, the legislative filter. You see, the modern federal legislative process operates less like a flowing pipeline where ideas travel smoothly from A to B, and much more like a highly restrictive, unforgiving filter. It's a system defined by multiple inflection points, heavily fragmented jurisdiction, and intense procedural hurdles. These features aren't bugs. They are literally built into the constitutional design of the republic. They make legislative success the stark exception, not the rule. Turns out the founding fathers didn't exactly design the system to move at the speed of ChatGPT. Let's walk through how this gauntlet actually works in practice. Any given bill has to survive a brutal series of steps. Step 1. Committee gatekeeping. A bill has to be selected, debated, and voted out of a specialized committee. Step 2. It needs to secure high-level leadership support just to get scheduled for a wider conversation. Step 3. Floor consideration. It has to survive debate, amendments, and a final vote in both the House and the Senate. And finally, Step 4. Chamber reconciliation. The House and Senate have to agree on a single, perfectly identical text before it ever sees the president's desk. At literally any single one of these inflection points,
a bill can just quietly die.
Section 4, the legislative filter in action. If we look at the hard data from the 118th Congress, the drop-off is just staggering. We started with over 19,000 bills and resolutions introduced. 19,000, but right away, only about 1,800 even made it out of committee. From there, roughly 1,000 passed the full Senate, and roughly 1,000 passed the House. And finally, at the very bottom of the filter, just 274 bills actually cleared both chambers and were signed into law, from over 19,000 down to 274. Let that sink in. This brilliantly illustrates the brutal math of the system. To put that into perspective, we are looking at an enactment rate of less than 1.5%. At each stage of the process, proposals are systematically winnowed down through a mix of severe institutional constraints and competing political incentives. A 98.5% failure rate is the baseline reality of Congress. For anyone trying to change the rules of the game, these hurdles are historically immense. So the ultimate question for anyone trying to understand Washington isn't just what bills are being introduced. That's the easy part. The real puzzle is this. What separates those rare 274 that actually made it through from the 19,000 that just evaporated? How does a piece of legislation survive that kind of extreme attrition? Section 5, why AI fails the filter. To answer that, we're drawing on some deep inside baseball expertise. The policy team at A16Z includes individuals who know exactly how an AI bill becomes a law, or more often, how it falls apart. This includes Ben, one of the authors of this analysis, who actually served as the floor director for House Majority Leader Steve Scalise for several years. So we aren't just looking at academic theory here. We are getting insights from people who have actually run the House floor, managed the votes, and know exactly why this complex process breaks down in the real world. The crucial takeaway is that for AI legislation, these hurdles are particularly brutal. Why does AI specifically get shredded by the filter? Well, first, broad jurisdictions. Because AI impacts your healthcare, your bank account, education, and national security, no single committee has clear ownership. This creates massive turf wars and intense procedural friction. Second, it lacks settled partisan alignment. The traditional dividing lines between Republicans and Democrats just haven't fully solidified around AI yet, making it incredibly hard to form predictable voting blocks. And third, AI often requires comprehensive rather than incremental solutions. And as we've just seen, the congressional filter is designed to halt sweeping changes. So even widespread agreement that something should be done is not nearly enough to pass comprehensive new frameworks. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to end today's explainer. If our constitutional system is literally hardwired to filter out sweeping, rapid changes, how will the United States ever manage to keep up with the exponential evolution of artificial intelligence? It's a massive, unresolved friction point between a deliberately slow-moving legislative filter and lightning-fast technological progress. I really hope this deep dive gave you a much clearer, grounded picture of the structural realities facing AI regulation today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration, and keep learning.